Welcome back, everyone, to another episode of You Don't Know Jack. I'm Dr. Haley Perlus, and my co-host, Dr. Jack Groppel of You
Hi,
Don't Know
everybody.
of You Don't Know Jack. We're here to talk about mentorship, and I am going to introduce it briefly, but then pass the mic over to Dr. Groppel because he has so much insight about this concept of mentorship because it's not something to take lightly, and it's very, very important for all of us. And Jack, why don't you begin really with your initial thoughts about mentorship?
Well, I'd be happy to, and I think the best way to start is my own story. I grew up in an era where you really didn't ask anyone to be your mentor. It was kind of like if someone believed in you, they kind of took you under your wing. And a lot of people, I think, they think the idea of mentorship has to be formal. Not necessarily. I can tell you the very first mentor I probably had was my sister. Ruth Ann is 10 years older than I am, and she got to know me pretty well. We had a father who was a hard charger, as people know that have been following us. And when I was in my 20s, I was a lost soul, and she pushed me to go into the field of kinesiology. And without that prodding, I don't know what I would end up doing. The joke in my family is that I'd be counting wolves in Wyoming instead of, being in the sports sciences the way I was and everything else. So family member can be a mentor. We don't have to formalize the idea of mentorship. Mentorship is really understanding the wisdom that someone else, maybe they've been there before you. And I also think you can have professional mentors, you can have personal mentors. I think you can have mentors about your marriage. I think you have mentors about being a parent. So I think there's all kinds of ways we can look at the idea of mentorship. Um, and then in my own life, my sister was my first. And then later on, when I did get into the field of kinesiology, my kines professor, whatever he saw in me, I have no idea, but he said 17 words to me that are, in my mind, infamous. The University of Illinois has written about it in my distinguished alum recognition. But he said, if you apply yourself, you could become a pioneering leader in the science of tennis performance. And then he was my master's thesis advisor. And then he sends me off to Florida State, where one of his colleagues, Terry Ward, and another colleague, Dr. Robert Singer, who was the president of the International Society of Sports Psychology, and Bob became the director of my dissertation. Well, Bob and I played tennis every day at noon. And Bob gave me some seriously tough love. I talk about it in my book, my recent memoir, that on one trip we went to the Olympics. It was the first scientific paper I ever presented was the Olympic Scientific Congress in Quebec City before the 76 Olympics in Montreal. And he dressed me down in the car. I mean, why are you doing research? And my attitude was because I think it needed to be done. And he literally scolded me about scientific inquiry and that I didn't understand what scientific inquiry was. And here I am on a car trip. We had just finished playing tennis, and I'm getting a lecture, but it was one of the best things that ever happened to me, Haley.
Yeah.
And then later on in my life, the spiritual side became very important to me. And a pastor at a church that I'd only gotten to know for like 2 or 3 weeks invited me to be part of his senior leadership, men's senior leadership group. Again, I guess in all these situations, I don't know why someone took me under their wing. There was never a word called mentor. I never asked anyone to be a mentor. They took me under their wing and guided me, and thank goodness they did.
Yeah. Yeah. And
So why don't you talk about your story? Maybe I mean you can go on, but then I think the listeners should hear your story as well.
yes, and I will. I just want to make a point, and maybe we can come back to it later. But as I'm listening to you, I'm wondering if we can distinguish between the responsibility or roles of a mentor versus role models.
Yeah, I think that's
Because,
fair.
because when
That's
I
fair.
was listening to you and talking about your sister and then your teachers, and there was never any formalized mentor relationship, but I'm wondering what the responsibility of each mentor and mentee was.
Well, I think that's a great question because I think we live in a different era today.
Hmm.
I think we live in an era, especially with social media and the way that you can stay in contact with people. It's very different, you understand, than as I was growing up.
Right.
So we didn't have a formal, like, will you be my mentor kind of a relationship. they took me under their wing, and they were very responsible. My sister, Chuck Dillman, Bob Singer, David Lovelace, Terry Ward, all these people that I mentioned. Now they were all professional mentors, remember, except until I got to David Lovelace. And, well, my sister was obviously personal, but I had no one overseeing my personal life or feeding my soul in my personal life. And that's where, as I mentioned in my memoir, that's where I had all my struggles.
Right.
So again, it comes back to, we didn't formalize it. I think this will be a good transition for us a little bit later on in this session, this episode, because I think today you should formalize it. I think we live in a little bit different era today.
Yes. And funny enough, even though I just got an email this week for someone else asking for literally, and I quote in the email, what is your mentorship program?
Mm-hmm.
Interesting. So it is asked because if I look back at my past, I don't recall, well, coming up to you and then also Dr. Jim Lair, your co-founder of the Human Performance Institute. Until then, I also didn't ask anyone to be a mentor of mine, but I've had mentors for sure. And that's where I was wondering, were they my mentors or were they role models? In my personal life and relationships, I certainly had my parents. With my professional life, I certainly had my parents too, and I asked for advice, whereas in my relationship, sometimes I just observed them more than asking for feedback and asking for help and asking for instruction, asking for guidance. So that's where I'm trying to figure out the difference between a role model and a mentor.
Yeah, I think a role model is someone you look up to
Hmm.
and you admire. I think a mentor is someone who feeds into you,
Yeah,
mind, body, and spirit. I think they feed into your heart and soul and your mind, and they help you grow and develop.
yeah,
I think a role model is someone you admire and look up to. So, in my mind, a role model doesn't take a whole lot of investment from the mentor, but a mentor that requires a lot.
yeah. So in that case, I certainly would call my parents, both of them, for professional and personal reasons, certainly mentors. Exerting effort towards my career, helping me make connections, guiding me. But
Mhm.
outside of my family, very clearly, I had my first mentor. His name is Rory, and he was an aerobics instructor, a group fitness instructor.
Mhm.
And when I was 17, I got my fitness certification and personal training, and I started wanting to teach as my, after school job or the way I, paid for certain things while I was in university. And he kind of took me under his wing. And he was presenting at conferences, and so I would be his assistant, if you will. We were doing step classes, and he'd be speaking with the mic, and I would be on stage with him. So I learned from him. He would bring me into his classes. This man, I mean, you had to, if you didn't call at 7 a.m. To get in his spin class, it was sold out by 7:05. People would
Wow.
show up 30 minutes to an hour in advance to get in line for his class because they wanted this front row spot. He had the gym was packed, and so occasionally he would bring me in and he would give me the mic for the last 5 minutes, but it was
He was
obvious
investing. He was
investing in me.
investing in you.
Yes. He would tell me to come in, at an off time. So he would teach me how to
Mhm.
speak. He would correct me. Haley, you're singing when you tell them countdowns instead of just telling what the next step is.
Right.
That's mentor. And not only did he teach me and coach me, he instilled confidence. He pushed me, but he also instilled this belief that you can do this. And then he would pass the torch on. If he wasn't able to show up, guess who was taking his place? Me. And he gave me opportunity to, to create, I guess, a kind of career in group fitness for myself. And then I
Yeah.
started speaking on the stages.
And there you have it.
And there
See,
you have
so
it.
he invested energy in you to get you started, and he gave you experiential learning. See, I think that's key.
Yes.
It wasn't just teaching you, he gave you experiences.
Yeah.
He helped you in the experiences.
Yes. And I think with mentor mentee, I think you choose each other.
Oh, I think so too. I think there has to be a chemistry of a connection because without that, it's almost impossible because the mentee can't feel lectured to,
Right.
and the mentor can't feel as though they're talking to a wall.
Right.
So, so the idea that there's mutual investment in teaching and learning, I think that's a key.
Yes. So I really think, other than, role model, I really think that this man was my first mentor. And then fast forward to my career. I've mentioned this before, I think in one of our earlier episodes, but when I was 17 years old, I always knew I wanted to be a sports psychologist since I was 12. When I was
Hmm.
17, whether my father gave me a book or probably because he did that, I was reading a book called Stress for Success by Dr. Lair.
Yeah.
And I was like, this is what I want to do. Because not only was he practicing sports psychology, he also had co-created with you the Human Performance Institute and now bringing it
Right.
into the corporate world. And then I found your books after that, because obviously I was introduced to the Human Performance Institute. So now
Right.
I have two people who, at first, you're not mentors yet. At first, I'm
Correct.
just admiring you, I'm observing you, I'm watching you. And then I got the courage years later, after I got my PhD and started practicing a bit, to call up the Human Performance Institute and ask to be your coach. And then after that, you were the first person I met in person before Dr. Lair.
Right.
And then I literally picked up the phone and asked you for help with my visa, asked you to help me with that. But then that led to, and can I pick your brain about this with your
Yeah,
career?
I
And can I
remember.
pick your brain about this?
Mhm.
And so
You
I don't know.
invested. Yeah, but you see, it was easy for me to take you under my wing because you invested in in a passion of learning and wanting to understand. So
Mm,
that was easy for me. That was a no-brainer as far as I was concerned. Because if you've got someone that's young and eager and yet not, I want to be careful with the word eager because sometimes we get the eager beavers that just boo, 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 and they're not learning. They're not distilling. They're not ingesting the information. It's just boom, 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 boom. And I don't believe that's really healthy for anybody. I mean, you were willing to really get in and put the waders on and get in the deep end of the pool and understand what swimming with the sharks really was like in sports psychology and what it really was like working with athletes, what it really was like working with coaches, and then with our business, what it really was like working with executives
right.
in the business world, the actual corporate athletes themselves, and even with the FBI agents, and I mean, it just you were willing to swim with the sharks.
Yeah. But I guess what I'm saying is I don't know that I asked you, Dr. Groppel, will you be my mentor?
I don't remember that either.
But I do know that I was calling and I was asking for guidance and seeking help, and it's not that I was calling everybody, right? So there was that, whatever kind of attraction that was, of, a meeting of the minds.
Right.
There was a little bit more of a formality than Rory, my mentor, in it, that just, I don't even know that I asked him. It just came about. Whereas I think
Correct.
I was more intentional with you being my mentor.
Well, then you also put me in a situation. I mean, when you asked me to be your sponsor for your US visa, I mean, that was interesting because I'm going, wait a minute, I'm getting to know her, and now I've got to dig in too, because if I'm going to do that, that's a responsibility. So, but it was interesting how our relationship developed then very quickly.
Yes. And then, I'm blessed and so fortunate to be able to have you as my mentor. And then, that makes this podcast. I mean, you had a passion project and you asked me to join you on that passion project. And so my mentor then became, co-host, and then I get to be here with you, and then we get to mentor whoever is listening. Well, I guess we're not formally mentoring, but we're certainly helping and advising and offer guidance together. So now you and I get to be mentor mentee and somehow be, partners in You Don't Know Jack.
I know it's kind of fun, actually. It really is. So let's talk a little bit about the responsibilities of a mentee and the responsibilities of a mentor, because I believe both come into the relationship with responsibilities. It's not like so I think sometimes mentees, they see the person that they want to be their mentor, and it's almost like, what I really want you to do is write a letter of recommendation for me. I want you, oh, I'm almost,
Yes.
it's almost as simple. I know I'm really dumbing that down, but what in your mind, let's talk about our relationship. When we realized we were going to have a mentor mentee relationship, what do you believe your responsibilities were as the mentee?
I believe that once it's chosen, like once you and I have this formal or informal agreement,
Mhm.
it is my responsibility to show up because I don't want to waste your energy. I don't want to waste your time. So show up prepared, willing, ready to listen, ready to learn. But I also think wouldn't behoove me to have 12 mentors.
No, I agree with that too. I agree with that.
It's not really a mentorship relationship, but if someone's trying to figure out what's the best nutrition program for them, they do their due diligence, they look to see what's out there, what programs are out there, and then once they do narrow it down and once they make a choice, there's a commitment to that choice because that's the only way that improvement can work when you commit and follow through. And
Hmm.
so once we established, this relationship, of course I have, other mentors. But in yours and my relationship, it is my responsibility to show up and follow through with what you and I are working on, with the feedback you're giving me,
Agreed.
with the guidance.
Agreed.
It may not always work, and then it's my responsibility to share that with you. Because maybe there's something I missed, or maybe there's something for you to help me pivot with. But there's that follow through, there's that commitment to you.
And I think it's the same for the mentor. I think the mentor has to be willing to show up. Um, and this is an investment because a lot of times mentors are very, very busy. I don't think you should be a mentor to 12 or 15 people either.
Right.
Uh, to your point, you shouldn't have 12 to 15 mentors. I don't think a mentor should have 12 to 15 mentees. Um, so I do believe it's quality of experience that you receive as a mentee and the quality of experience you provide as a mentor.
Yeah, absolutely. And
Yeah.
do you have to be in the same, if we're talking about careers, do you have to be in the same career?
Well, you could have a little bit of both. I mean, you could have a career mentor and you could have someone who's a life mentor.
You can.
Maybe you've got some struggles with, for example, someone might be in accounting but yet maybe they struggle in speaking about budget defenses. So they might have an accountancy mentor, someone who's in the field, but they might also have a mentor who's helping them with public speaking
Hmm.
that maybe doesn't have anything to do with their career, but could help them further along in their career.
Hmm. Yeah, great point. And then there's trust.
Well, that's huge. I mean, because the idea that a mentor is lifelong, I don't know, I don't think you should go into it with that kind. I was really blessed. I mean, Chuck Dillman and Bob Singer, they're both passed away now, but they were mentors of mine until they died. I mean, I could call them at any time, no matter where I was in my journey, and I could talk to them. And they would give me advice, they would give me tough love, and even though I was living quote unquote a successful career, I could hear it. And David Lovelace, the same from my spiritual side, and my sister's still alive. She takes great pride in the fact that she was the one that steered me in the whole direction of the field that I went in, and thank God she did.
Yeah,
So, but to think that it's a lifelong commitment, that's not the way to go into it.
yeah,
I think you go into it not necessarily with a time limit, because I do think, like, what if things aren't going well? We can talk about that in just a second, but I think you go in with a commitment to learn and a commitment to teach from the mentor and the mentee's perspective, respectively, teaching and learning, and then let the cards fall where they may, because it'll be a natural progression if it's meant to be. I really do believe that.
I do too. I do too. And you don't have to be, like, in order to be a mentor, you don't have to have so many years of experience or so many years being alive. It's interesting. I was speaking at an event early in January of 2020, of this year, 2026, and in Telluride at the Telluride Science Center. And it was interesting because it was about leadership and mentorship and bringing the community together. And I asked
Mhm.
everyone to raise, and it was the whole town was invited. So there was, I think the youngest was maybe 6 years old, and then all the way up. And I asked everyone to raise their hands if they've ever had a mentor, someone who has guided them and instilled knowledge and taught them. And so everyone puts their hand up. And then I asked
Mhm.
them to keep their hands up if they've ever been a mentor, taught someone, whether it was a brother, a sister, a friend. And the 6 year
Yeah.
old kept her hand up.
Yeah.
because she has a younger sibling at home that she's teaching how to hit a, do a twirl or hit a baseball or whatnot.
Right.
And so it's a really nice understanding to know that at any given moment you can have a mentor and be a mentor yourself. And that's what actually brings community together.
And I think let's go a little deeper with the relationship that you and I had at the beginning,
Hmm.
because I'm not a psychologist. I mean, I think this is really a key thing.
Other people think you are.
I know that's it's really interesting. I'm not though. I don't ever claim to be.
I know.
I'm a coach. I'm the ball coach. That's what I am. But I have a PhD in exercise physiology. But even though most of my work though was in bioengineering, most of my research when I was doing peer-reviewed research articles, when I was on the faculty, I got tenure at the University of Illinois. It was more bioengineering and biomechanics. But my doctorate's in exercise physiology. But because I had Bob Singer as a mentor, I've learned a very multidimensional approach. So it really helped me become an overall coach. And a lot of people think I'm a psychologist, but I'm really not. I never, and nor do I ever claim to be. But let's talk about how our relationship, I think that's key because you are a sports psychologist, yet I became a mentor of yours, but I'm not in the same field that you are.
Right.
I think, so why don't you to kind of describe what was there for you to learn when you approached it? And I know it was the Human Performance Institute and the business side, but I think it'd be good for our listeners to understand that our backgrounds weren't necessarily that aligned, or were they? See, this is the thing that I'd like our listeners to understand.
Right. And I will say before I go into that, Dr. Jack, what you are really excellent at is, and I think this is something that I've learned from you, to stay in your own lane too. So where I have said to you before, just recently I've been talking about my career and, you know, sports psychology aspects of it. And you're very clear. You're like, you know what, that's not a question for me. That would be a
Yeah.
question for, well, let's say Dr. Jim Lair, because he is a sports psychologist. And so I
Exactly.
do, like he's a mentor of mine in that way.
Hmm.
And what I've taught, what I've learned from you with regards to career is certainly communication, certainly presence, storytelling. Um, Listen, I met you very briefly right before you were about to go and give one of your final coaching at HPI, and you stopped and gave me real quality 5 minutes of your time where I felt that in those 5 minutes, you didn't know that you didn't even think about the celebrities and the high performers that you were about to present to and your own job and your own role and your own desire. You were really focusing on me. And that I will take with me forever because I want everyone that I talk to have that same feeling that I had, in those 5 minutes with you. So it's that. And then I've asked you obviously about I'm an entrepreneur, so are you. So I've asked you about those things. We've talked about our personal life, maybe not so much when it's being recorded, but we've created a friendship out of
Yeah,
this as
you
well.
certainly have.
So, it's remarkable what I've learned from you. And as a mentor, I can applaud you because you share what you know and you tell me, I don't know, that's not my area of expertise. So let's go find someone who can help you in that. You never let me, you never say, go on your way. I don't know the answer. Go figure it out. You say, well, maybe ask this person or maybe talk to this person, or I can ask advice and bring it back to you. You're very, very clear, which I think makes you a very strong mentor.
Thank you. And I do believe that that's an important part of this is having the boundaries.
Yeah.
Even mentors who we adore and we admire, they don't know everything. And I learned that Bob Singer, on the day I finished my doctoral defense, I may have shared this before, but I'll never forget. I can see it happening right now. We were in Montgomery Gym, or Montgomery Hall, it's called now, at Florida State University, and I just finished. Everybody just congratulated me. He put his arm around me. This is my dissertation advisor. He says, now you realize that you have a license that you don't know everything because you've got a PhD. Now you are licensed to understand that you don't know everything.
So good.
And that was, I'm telling you, I can feel his arm around me right now and telling me those words. And this is some 50 some odd years ago.
Yeah, so good. And so fortunate. And I will also say this, that sometimes the the assumed mentor, the person you think should, I put that in quotation, should be your mentor, isn't always. I mean, I too have a PhD, so I did my master's, I had an advisor, I had a
Hmm.
dissertation advisory, I went to did my PhD, none of them, sorry to say, none of them are mentors. In fact, many of them are people that I learned how not to be, if I can be really
That's a
honest.
great point. That's a great point. Um, Always be watching people. Always watch
Hmm.
how people behave,
Hmm.
because it's never the words out of someone's mouth. It's their behavior
Hmm.
that dictates if they're going to be willing to help you and if they can help you.
Yeah. And if it's for themselves, or like to use your words, other focused.
Right. Yeah, I mean, a true mentor is very other focused. They're not focused on themselves. They give of themselves to help someone else grow. I mean, and they care about someone else. It really is caring about. You could argue that it's agape love in many ways, because you really do care about someone else's growth, and then how can you impact that person's life and their growth
Yeah.
and help them be better.
And then from the mentee perspective, so that's my role in our relationship, is I have to take the responsibility and receive your help. Because why on earth are you going to give it if I'm not willing to receive it? And I know a lot of times we struggle with saying, give me more. I want to take.
Well, and I think this is kind of an interesting thing. Let's do this for our listeners right now, because do you remember about a year and a half or 2 years ago when you called me and said that you want to do what I do?
And you said no, not at
Well, wait,
first.
what did I have you do though? Wait, this is really good,
Yeah.
because you called me and you said, I want to do what you've done.
Hmm.
And I said, what did I have you do?
You said, slow down first. Let's see if that's really true for you. And you gave me
Yeah.
an assignment. You gave me two assignments. One of the assignments was to no resource boundaries. So anything that could happen, what are 10 things that I'd like to do with my life? And
Mhm.
then you also asked me to write down my day to day, like what I wanted to have, like what my day to day looks like in my wildest dreams.
In your ideal day.
Yeah. And
Yeah.
so I did.
Yeah.
And then you
And you
looked
said
at
it
it.
to me.
You looked at it
And
and you said to me, yeah, I'm not going to let you do what I did.
that's right. I remember that so clearly. And you received it very well, because it wasn't like I was shooting a hole in your dream.
No.
I think that's really important too. I didn't want you to have an aspiration that would hurt you personally, because what your aspirations were really weren't going to allow you to be 24/7, 365 dedicated to a career. You wanted something more
Yeah.
than just that. And unfortunately, that was my life. My life was my career. And it took me a long time to understand and I've flipped around. I mean, and as people have seen from my memoir, that the reconnection to my faith, and then adopting my son, going to China by myself, I mean, just flipped my world upside down and totally changed my world 25 years ago.
Yeah.
But earlier in my career, I was absorbed in my career, and that's how I created what I did professionally.
Yeah. And that was it. That's not who I am. And that's not that's not what you wished for me either.
Exactly. I wished a healthy life for you where you could achieve your dreams. I want all your dreams to come true. But if you tried to follow my lifestyle back in the day, your dreams might not have come true. So
Right.
I want the listeners to understand, I wasn't bashing your dreams. I just wanted you to check yourself on, are you sure this is what you want to do? Or is there a way you can achieve your dream and not sacrifice the things that really matter to you?
Yeah.
And that was the conversation we had.
Yeah. We've been wanting to talk about this topic since before we even started
I
recording.
know. This is great. I really enjoyed this. So, everyone, we would love your comments and questions, because we're willing to blow this out and build this out a little bit more if you've got the questions. So, we'd love to hear from you about what your thoughts are and what your questions might be. Yeah, and for any of you, then please take a look at Haley's book, Personal Podium, that I've gotten behind big time. It's a tremendous book, and I think it'll help you a lot. And then my memoir came out earlier this year called Mountains Within, which is my life story of it's called Mountains Within: A Life of Achievement, a Quest for Meaning in the Mountain That Changed Everything. Because when I climbed Mount Kilimanjaro, my that changed my life on writing the story. So We invite you to take a look at our books. And by the way, for others, if you're involved in training, we want you to look at Evolve Leadership. They took over the content from the Human Performance Institute when we left there, and just we really support them a lot. And we just want you to be thinking about that. So it's really been a pleasure to be with all of you. Haley, thank you for your questions. Thank you very much. It's been such a joy to work with you as a mentor. And I just thank you for everything.
Well, you took the words out of my mouth. I was going to say it's been such a pleasure to have you as my mentor,
Thank you.
and I look forward. I know you just said we're not supposed to be mentors forever, but I'm gonna. I kind of want that.
Okay, I'm good. I'm good. All right, everybody. We wish you well. We look forward to seeing you in our next episode. Thanks for watching. Be with us.
Bye.
Bye.